Welcome to the Open Forum in the Villages, Florida. In this show, we talk to leaders of clubs and interesting folks who live here in the Villages to get perspectives of what is happening here in the Villages, Florida. We are a listener-supported podcast. There will be shout-outs for supporters in episodes.
This is Mike Roth. And listeners, I'm thrilled to share with you this podcast, which is my passion project for you. This podcast brings you knowledge, inspiration, and a lot of things that people need to know about the Villages and the people living here. Be sure to hit the follow button to get the newest episode each week. Creating this podcast is a labor of love, even though it demands more time than I can easily spare. Now, here's where you come in. You can help us keep the podcast alive and thriving. How? By becoming a supporter. The easy way for you to support us is to visit our podcast webpage, openforuminthevillagesflorida.com, and click on the supporter button at the top of the page, or the purple supporter box. Even a small donation of $3 to $10 a month makes a big difference, and you can cancel your subscription at any time. Your support means the world to us. Stay curious, stay inspired, and keep those headphones on. I hope everyone enjoys today's show. This is Mike Roth on Open Forum in the Villages, Florida. I'm here today with Larry Moran.
Thank you.
Larry and his wife Cheryl moved here to the Villages in 2008. Larry retired after 40 years as a successful wealth advisor. He and his wife owned a 3-state insurance agency and brokerage. He holds 4 professional designations related to financial advisory and insurance. Upon his retirement, Larry was made aware of the Seniors versus Crime outfit, a special project of the Florida Attorney General's office. Volunteers work directly with the Attorney General's office to help seniors who have been scammed or harmed by criminals who prey on the elderly. Larry is a supervisor and manager of the Brownwood Wildwood Division of Seniors versus Crime. He and his crew have recovered over $3 million over the past 5 years and returned that money to scammed or harmed villagers. Thanks again, Larry. That sounds like great work.
Thank you.
Now, Larry, how much of your time do you devote to working with Seniors versus Crime? Why do you lend your time to them?
Mike, sometimes up to 30 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought I'd put that much time in, but I do. The reason for it is I've always been an other-oriented type of person. I want to help those who have been scammed. I feel bad about it, and I want to help them become better than they were when they came into the office.
Interesting question. You managed to recover $3 million. In that same period of time, how much money was scammed from seniors?
Oh, many more, believe me. We're a target-rich environment here. They prey on the elderly. We had the demographic that they're looking for, and they're very good at what they do, Mike.
How many cases do you intake
per month? That varies anywhere from 30 and in some cases up to 60, 70 cases per month.
Wow, more than one a day.
We're very busy.
And how many investigators do you have in your office?
In my crew alone, we're open Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I'm the Thursday supervisor. My crew alone, we have about 8 investigators, or we call them sleuths.
Tell our listeners about the biggest case that you've worked on.
Yes, Mike, it's a very interesting case. I had this man and wife. The man was ill. The wife would join him when he went into the doctor's office. The doctor would diagnose and do treatment, etc. Interestingly enough, the doctor's wife would come into the examining room. She developed a trustful relationship with the man and the woman. One day, the man came up missing, and the wife became very concerned, as you might expect. She looked all over, outside, inside, etc. Then she happened to look in the closet, and there he was hanging in the closet. He had decided to take his life. She was devastated by that. Somehow the news got into the doctor's office, and the doctor's wife gave the wife a call. She said, I know you're devastated. I want to help you. I have the ability to do that. I'm going to come over. She came over and said, if you just sign this document here, it will give me enough power to really help you. And what it turned out to be was a power of attorney, a general power of attorney. The doctor's wife was able to get into her entire estate and take it over through that general power of attorney. She even had the life insurance policy, who the beneficiary was this woman's son, taken off, and she was replaced as the beneficiary of the life insurance policy. By the time it got to me, it was in a critical stage. I was able to have the power of attorney rescinded. We were able to get the credit cards turned around. We got most of our money back, up to tune of $600 and some thousand. That was my biggest and most interesting case.
Did the doctor's wife, who was guilty of a fraudulent transaction, in my opinion, was she ever prosecuted for this?
It's interesting that she wasn't, because the woman who was the victim refused to do it. She still cared about this woman, strangely enough. She never pressed charges. She should have, obviously. So that was a disappointment to us, but that's how she felt about it.
What about the cause of death of the husband? What caused the suicide?
He was terribly ill, and I think he became depressed. And as depression took over, he started to consider suicide, and that's what he did. He was kind enough to his wife to cover his face. So he had a hood over his face when she discovered him, so she didn't have to have that as a lingering memory.
Wow, that's a shame. And I know he's probably not the first case of suicide here in the villages.
I think it's not uncommon.
I had a friend who committed suicide with pills. I asked the sergeant from the Sumter County Sheriff's Office how many times it happens. He says a couple times a week.
Yeah.
He finds a suicide.
When you see these obituaries, they don't necessarily tell you how they die.
Yes, I don't think I've ever seen a suicide in the Daily Sun. I guess the families don't want it.
Exactly.
Now, Larry, can you tell our audiences about the 5 most common scams that harm people here in the villages and seniors in general?
Absolutely, Mike. Number 1, landscapers. We'll talk about that in some detail later. Pools. People putting pools in. Some of our largest cases are scams related to pools. Roofers. We've been inundated by roofers here. One of the roofers went to jail. Dentist offices. Older people subject to a lot of dental fraud. And auto purchases. We had one case recently where a villager with substantial mental issues ended up buying 5 automobiles in a month from the same dealer.
What is a villager going to do with 5 cars unless they were specialty vehicles?
He forgot that he purchased these vehicles. So he would go in and purchase another vehicle. The dealer knew what was happening, but they never did anything about it. They were very happy to sell him every single vehicle.
Has that case been adjudicated?
It's in the process right now. We have a special person working on Wednesdays that deals with these dealers, and she's been very successful in getting these things turned around.
That's one of the prominent dealers in the villages area.
Yes. You need to be very careful because some of them are oriented towards scamming you.
I've noticed that some of the auto dealers here in the villages want to charge more to villagers for the same vehicle that can be purchased in Jacksonville for $1,000 less.
That's very true. And that's just a minor aspect of it. Not only that, but sometimes when you go into some of these dealers and you want your car maintained, you can come out of there with a hefty bill. They love to take care of women because most women don't know much about cars. And so they love to prey on them.
Yeah, sometimes women neglect cars. I had a friend who had a car that she inherited from her mom, so it was more than 20 years old, and it was valued to her as an heirloom. She hadn't done much maintenance on it. She brought it into a Mercedes dealer, a very legitimate one, and they told her she needed $8,000 worth of repairs. She had actually tried to do it on the cheap with a local maintainer, and he screwed it up. He put the oil filter on backwards, and the oil pan leaked a lot of oil. That's the way she knew she had problems. She had her car towed up to a legitimate dealer, and they found the $8,000 worth of repairs. She showed me the estimate, and I looked at it and said, all of that is legitimate stuff that's either deferred maintenance or stuff that should have been done and inspected years ago that is now piled up. The real question is, do you want to put the money into a car that's an heirloom and, you're going to put in more than half the value of the car, or do you want to just get rid of it? She says, no, I can't sell it. It was my mom's car, and she put the money in it, and now she's got a roadworthy, safe car again.
Sure.
The local vendor who didn't know how to do the job took the money.
Of course.
No recourse out.
Yeah. I'll tell you, there are some dealers, what we have to determine at senior versus crime when the complainant comes in, is it their fault or is it the vendor's fault? We have to make that determination because in many cases, as you point out, It's more the complainant's fault. And then we have to give them that information, which a lot of times they don't really want to hear.
She didn't want to hear that the car had rear tie rod arms with rubber bushings and protective covers
Right.
that had deteriorated probably years ago, and she expected to drive the car. You had to replace those parts that wore out over time.
Sure.
That's no one's fault that they wore out over time. It's regular wear and tear. Can you tell us a little bit more about landscaping?
The landscapers, a lot of times, if they're fly-by-nights, they will come in and ask you to pay them up front for the entire landscaping duty. And that's a big mistake. And that's where we see most of our situations. They come in and do very little work, and that's the end of their participation. Also, the other thing we have to determine is if you're paying by check or by credit card, I always recommend that people pay by credit card and don't pay all of it up front. Maybe you pay 50% and then wait until they finish the job, then you pay the rest.
I always like to pay less than 10% up
Yeah.
front.
Absolutely. So fly-by-nights, they don't have enough money to fund what they need to do for you. So they'll ask you for a lot of money up front. That's when you want to get rid of them, and you just want to go to a reputable landscaper.
Yeah. When they say you have to pay 50% up front because I have to buy the paving blocks to put in your
Exactly.
driveway, well, that's a scam deal.
Absolutely.
What about this issue that comes up all the time with landscapers and remodeling contractors about you have to hire a licensed contractor?
Yes. There are certain parties that need to be licensed by the state. Not all contractors need to be licensed. For example, landscapers don't need to be licensed. There's a bill in place right now that looks like it's going to go through. The Senior versus Crime Leadership has been sponsoring. They're going to require them to be either licensed or be responsible as if they were licensed.
Bonded?
Yeah, bonded and insured, etc. So when they come in, you have some recourse. Because if they don't have to be licensed, your only recourse may be ending up in court.
That can be expensive or non-productive. And the bad contractors know that.
They know what they're doing when they do it. Many of them are very sophisticated. They've gotten away with it for a long time. A lot of them will go out of business and change their name, go right back into business the next day.
What do you think of the Better Business Bureau?
The Better Business Bureau is a good place for you to make a complaint so that other people can check and see what kind of name your prospective person or company will be. They're part of our database when people call in to see if a company is reputable.
All right, let's take a quick break and listen to an Alzheimer's tip from Dr. Craig Curtis.
We now know that Alzheimer's disease starts about 20 years before the symptoms, with the buildup of a toxic protein called amyloid. Scientists have been on a quest to remove amyloid to see how it affects the disease. The medicine that was recently FDA approved to slow down symptoms in people with Alzheimer's disease works by removing this substance called amyloid out of the brain. Now, we're attempting to use those medicines to actually remove amyloid before someone develops symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, such as memory loss and forgetfulness.
So that's in that 20-year period before the disease is obvious?
Scientists now call it Alzheimer's pathologic change versus Alzheimer's disease. And we're saving the term Alzheimer's disease for when someone is actually experiencing symptoms due to Alzheimer's disease.
With over 20 years of experience studying brain health, Dr. Curtis's goal is to educate the village's community on how to live a longer, healthier life. To learn more, visit his website, craigcurtismd.com, or call 352-500-5252 to attend a free seminar.
Thank you, Dr. Curtis. I'm back with Larry Moran, and we're talking about seniors versus crime. Larry, before we took the break, you were talking about problems with roofers.
Yes.
How does that work?
A lot of times what happens is these roofers will come in and they'll say, we'll give you a free evaluation of your roof. We need to get up on your roof. Don't let them up on your roof. Once they get up there, a lot of times, some of them, now a lot of them are reputable, but the ones that are going to scam you, they're going to pull up your tile. And what that does is that breaks the seal and it can cause a leak. And then they can come back down and say, you got tiles that are loose up there. So they go to the insurance company and end up replacing a whole roof. What's happened with that is that in the villages, we've had so many roofs replaced that it drove up insurance costs, and it cost 37 insurance companies to go belly up in Florida. It also had another effect. It drove our homeowner rates double. Anybody listening to this will agree that their homeowner rate is one of the highest in the country.
I've never seen anything like this. Sinkhole insurance, a separate policy for hurricane. In this particular neighborhood, probably 25% of the houses had either major or minor roof damage from this last hurricane. Happened to my neighbor. I go out the next morning and there's roof tiles all over the driveways. You could see he needs a new roof.
But Mike, in some cases, you don't need a new roof. In some cases, you can actually have the roof repaired.
What about that 30% rule?
That may or may not apply.
I thought there was a rule where if more than 30% of the roof was damaged, they had to replace the whole thing.
All right. One of the expertise that I do have can be as an expert witness on insurance claims. Each insurance policy has its own contractual requirements. As a general rule, there's no limitation or any kind of percentage. It just is based upon whether or not the maintenance of the roof is more expensive. It can be more expensive than the replacement. That's usually the line of demarcation.
A lot of our listeners have heard that when a roof becomes 10 years old, the insurance company won't cover it unless you put a new roof in.
Mike, that's somewhat a false statement. There are some insurance companies that have requirements around 15, 18 years. I've never seen one as low as 10 years. You can have that mitigated if you send out an investigator. If it needs to be replaced, we'll replace it because we want to keep the insurance. Many of these roofs are 20 to 30-year roofs. That's where the scam comes in, because the roofers would say your roof won't pass the qualification for your insurance.
Well, I was told by one insurance company that didn't want to write a policy for a 10-year-old roof was that because my roof was installed in 2017, they didn't install a membrane underneath the roofing shingles. Therefore, it didn't meet current code and didn't want to write that roof.
You can't blame them there, right? Insurance companies have to operate by the zoning requirements and the various elements of the local authorities. They're very careful to look at that. Each insurance company will be concerned about your roof as it might relate to some of these zoning issues.
Now, I have Progressive Insurance for the house, and they actually sent out an inspector last week to take pictures of the house and specifically the roof. Is that normal?
Yes, that's good for you. If they find that your roof's in great condition, you're not going to have any problem with your renewal. State Farm does the same thing. I have State Farm insurance for our roof. He came out, he made a suggestion. The palms were actually touching the roof. He said, if you could get rid of those, we can have a much better time. I did that immediately, and we have a very good rate with State Farm right now.
They told me State Farm will write that in more than 10 years.
Yes.
Which was quite surprising. And any of our listeners who are looking for homeowners insurance, State Farm might be a good recommendation.
I agree.
Let's talk about some of the other common scams. You mentioned pools.
Pools. Mike, right now, we have our largest cases are pool contractors. As a matter of fact, there's one case right now where I'm sure the owner of the pool company is going to go to jail. What they're doing, they're writing contracts, taking huge money down, only completing maybe 10% of it, and then you never see them again.
They dig the hole.
Dig the hole in the ground, now you got some problems there. Many of them hire subcontractors that don't know what they're doing. So our biggest complaints monetarily have come from pool contractors. So be very careful and check out if you're going to have a pool installed, because these are large cases, well over $100,000, where people are losing money and no way to recover it, because a lot of these pool contractors hide behind the bankruptcy laws and other things. That's one of our most prolific cases right now.
So is that another area where the contractors are asking for very large deposits and not delivering the work?
Exactly.
Okay. Let's talk about the dentist office scams.
Yeah. Well, the older we get, we may have problems with our teeth. You look at a horse's mouth, and you can tell the health of a horse by his teeth. What's happened with the dentists, many of them are bringing you into the office, they're doing their diagnostics. They'll tell you, okay, you need this. And then when you come in, suddenly they discover you need about $10,000 more. We've had a lot of trouble with dentists. As a matter of fact, I personally had an issue with a dentist where I had a front tooth replaced, and I came in. and they put the temporary in. I came in for the permanent. And I said, where's the dentist? He said, well, he's in jail. He had committed a fraud. I had to pull somebody out of retirement to put my front tooth in. We're getting a lot of complaints about some very famous dentist organizations where they're just putting way too much money into these folks' teeth. One woman was told that she paid it. It was over $40,000 when she learned later that only maybe $1,000 of that was needed. You have to be very careful when you deal with some of these dentists.
Are you talking about the corporate-owned practices or the individual dentist?
What we found is there's a very famous corporate-owned dental organization. They're franchised.
Yes, I know.
So there are various ones that are good and some that are bad.
Is there some easy advice you can give to our listeners, Larry, that will help them avoid scams?
Yes. The first thing they can do is give me a call. Senior versus Crime.
Why don't you tell our listeners what that number is?
Thank you, Mike.
It's 352-775-3186.
Do you have a website? You can make them a complaint online.
Go to seniorsversuscrime.com. You don't have to come in. Always pay by a credit card, Mike. If you can always, because at that time you can dispute it. If you pay by check or cash, there's no recovery there other than the courts.
A lot of vendors now are charging 3 or 4% to pay by credit card.
Yeah, it's worth it because you have the ability to dispute any kind of scam. And a lot of those disputes are very successful. Look carefully and see if they have a contract. And if they do have a contract, make sure you read the entire contract. If they don't have a contract, you may want to write a contract yourself. When they come into the office, we look for a contract because I want to see if it's been breached by either party. If it's been breached by the vendor, then we have a lot of leverage to work with that vendor to make sure they do the right thing.
So if someone only has a verbal contract with a landscaper, there's a problem.
Big problem. Verbal contracts, unless you have a witness that's not part of your family. I'm not an attorney, but a lot of times those verbal contracts won't hold water. Another thing, you never want to front all the money. I see people do that all the time, and they're burned. They're burned big time. Never let them up on your roof unless the insurance company requires it, because there's no reason. I always tell people, look, unless your roof is leaking, you probably don't need a roof. But they want to get up there and they want to find a problem for you. I would suggest that they never get up on that roof. If they're asking you to go out and buy gift certificates, that's a big red flag right there immediately.
Now, Larry, have you documented your work in a book?
Thank you, Mike. I have a published book called, strangely enough, Seniors versus Crime. You can find it on Amazon under my name, Larry Moran. It documents some of our major cases and helps people understand what to look for, what kind of red flags you should look for. With AI coming in, the scams are going to be much more sophisticated. We're going to be a lot more victims.
Now, I'm surprised you could get away with naming the book Seniors versus Crime.
I had to get permission all the way up to the Attorney General, who was happy to do so, as a matter of fact, because they want that exposure, because who doesn't want to help seniors recover their losses?
How can they purchase the book?
Okay, they can go into Amazon, just search for the book Senior versus Crime by Larry Moran, and it'll come up. You can purchase it there, and it's on a very discounted basis. Afford it.
But how long ago was it published?
I think it's been published now for about
8 months.
And we're doing very well with
Which
it.
very well means
Couple hundred books at this point.
a couple hundred books.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Not as good as I'd like it to be, because I want it to get out to as many seniors as possible. I want to thank you for the forum to do that today.
Larry, thanks for being our guest. Have you forgotten to include something that you wanted to talk about today?
Yeah, I wanted to also advise people that I have another book out there. It's about my bizarre life, and I've been told that people can't put it down.
And what is the name of the book?
And the book is,
I just grab a copy of the book.
I just want to read. People won't believe this, right? The family.
Most people don't interpret WTF that way, Larry.
That's what I thought might grab their interest.
Yes.
It's about my bizarre life. I was 73 years old when I found out who my biological father was and his side of the family. I got to know almost all of my cousins, and I found out a lot of things. For example, my grandfather was part of the Black Hand in Italy. He had to escape to avoid prosecution, came to the United States to become a regular. However, he had a son, Uncle Gus, who became a hitman for the Springfield mob. I have a little bit of criminality on that side of the family. However, I also have some very wonderful and talented cousins who I've fallen in love with. They fully accepted me. I call my biological father. He could have been Johnny Appleseed. Let's put it that way, because I found a few brothers and sisters as well.
Thanks for joining us today, Larry.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, Mike.
Remember, our next episode will be released next Friday at 9 a.m. Should you want to become a major supporter of the show or have questions, please contact us at mike@rothvoice.com. This is a shout out for supporters: Tweek Coleman, Ed Williams, Dwayne Romich, Paul Sorgen, and Dr. Craig Curtis at K2 in the Villages. We will be hearing more from Dr. Curtis with short Alzheimer's tips each week. If you know someone who should be on the show, contact us at mike@rothvoice.com. The way our show grows is with your help. Text your friends about this show if you enjoyed listening, or just tell your friends about the show. We thank everyone for listening to the show. The content of the show is copyrighted by Roth Voice 2025. All rights reserved.